On this International Women's Day, the accomplishments and challenges for women on the continent. Could Ugandan epidemiologists hold the key to combating the Zika virus? And a Slovenian comedian strikes gold as his catchy Putin parody video goes viral. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent Makori. This is Africa 54. Now, Tuesday, March the 8th, is International Women's Day, a day devoted by the United Nations and non-government organizations to celebrating women's political, economic, and social progress that includes the hashtag theme Pledge for Parity. Africa 54's Esther Githu-Ewart has our report.
Women around the world contribute to the cultural, political, and socio-economic well-being of their societies in spite of the many challenges they continue to face. The continent of Africa is no different, and women continue to champion their rights to achieve gender parity. I caught up with a Tanzanian native, Musia Kibone Clark, a professor at Howard University in Washington.
International Women's Day is an opportunity for women around the world to come together, to unite across racial boundaries, across geographic boundaries, for African women to unite, but also for women to unite globally.
Professor Musia acknowledges that African women still face enormous cultural and political obstacles as they strive to break those barriers.
So many challenges. But I do think that there are a lot of women's organizations that have gone so far, that are blazing trails in the ways of politics and violence against women and, women's representation in politics. I think we're going farther.
Professor Musia also spoke about some of the challenges facing her native country of Tanzania.
In Tanzania, we have issues of violence against women in Tanzania and the rights of women in marriage when they're dealing with abusive situations. The laws do not go far enough in Tanzania to really protect these women. So I think strengthening some of those laws, dealing with issues related to people with albinism. A lot of the times women and children are, some of the greatest victims of that. And I don't think the government has really pushed forward enough with prosecuting those and investigating those cases.
Adage goes, behind every successful man, there's a woman. But what should men do to assist women achieve their goals?
By recognizing that addressing gender issues also impacts national issues. And so if you deal with women's health, you deal with national health issues. When you deal with women's literacy, you deal with the national literacy issue.
Professor Musia says African Union member countries need to adopt policies that champion women's rights across the continent.
A lot of them would deal with child marriage. A lot of them would deal with violence against women, especially female genital cutting. A lot of them would deal with women's rights in terms of inheritance, in terms of marriage and divorce. A lot of them would deal with women's representation in politics.
She says it's imperative for women to support each other in order to achieve their goals.
Stand up and have a voice, and not just when it affects them, but when they see it's affecting their sisters, not when it's just an issue that they themselves are personally connected to.
Women in Africa continue to break barriers in education, in politics, and the fight for equality. They are connecting on a continental and global level, slowly but surely. Esther Githu-Ewart, VOA News, Washington.
Well, as we continue our coverage of International Women's Day, the story of Nigeria's Chibok girls represents the struggle to improve the conditions for women, their security, education, and equality. Now, the hashtag Bring Back Our Girls movement was created almost 2 years ago when more than 250 schoolgirls were abducted in Chibok by Boko Haram terrorists. VOA's Nicholas Pignol has more from Abuja.
Every day at 5 p.m., the ritual is the same in downtown Abuja. 2,000 people gather near the Unity Fountain, a monument celebrating the Federation of Nigeria States. Even though TV crews disappeared a long time ago, the wheel remains the same for the Bring Back Our Girls movement. Today, March 8th, it has been 694 days since the Chibok girls were kidnapped by Boko Haram militants in the middle of the night. Waziri Bello tells VOA he still believes they will be free.
I still believe that the Chibok girls are alive and they can be rescued. The federal government of Nigeria has the responsibility to rescue each and every citizen that find himself in this situation. The Chibok girls are children of the poor, children that are voiceless in this country, and they need somebody to speak out for them.
Bring Back Our Girls was created to engage Goodluck Jonathan's government to find the girls. Now, the president is Muhammadu Buhari, and authorities say Boko Haram has been degraded significantly. But journalist Eman Usman Shehu has doubts.
The president likes to say that Boko Haram has been technically defeated. I don't buy into that. Yes, Boko Haram has been suppressed in that they don't rampage the way they used to before. But then it is we from the history of Boko Haram, we know Boko Haram is always capable of retreating and then coming back in full force.
The fight to free the girls has become broader. It's a woman's issue in Nigeria, according to Bring Back Our Girls spokesperson Aisha Yusufu.
Fighting for the Chibok girls is fighting for the little girl that I was so many years ago, who was crying out and yearning for help, and no help came. And I just know I can never give up on them.
In few weeks, Bring Back Our Girls will mark a sad anniversary. It will be 2 years since the abduction of the Chibok girls. Only 57 have been released, 219 are still missing. From Abuja, Nigeria, Nicola Pino, VOA News.
Now, Aisha Yusuf, one of the members of Bring Back Our Girls movement, speaks about the importance of remembering the missing Chibok girls on International Women's Day.
24 years ago, I was like the Chibok girl, and education was not seen as a priority where I grew up. And by the age of 11, I had no girls to play with because all of them were married off. All my girls were married off. And people made a mockery of me for still going to school, for still daring to get an education. And that's exactly where the Chibok girls find themselves. And I knew that if I was taken 24 years ago, almost 25 years now, and nobody said anything, my parents wouldn't have been able to do anything because they are poor. They were poor then. And in this country, unfortunately, when one is poor, one is voiceless, nameless, and faceless.
Now, as we recognize the achievements of women, viewers Julie Tabo in Washington and correspondent Jill Craig in Kenya shine a spotlight on a U.S.-based organization that is helping to empower young Maasai girls and women in Kenya through education, one life at a time.
I'm going to hold your hand, okay?
Gloria Kotente Mometa is training to be a doctor.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. As a medical student from Kenya, she's learned a great deal in the 8 weeks she's spent in hospitals in and around Washington.
So this is the right kidney?
Mm-hmm. And she hopes to share that newfound knowledge with her peers back home.
My experience here has been great. The doctors are great. I've got to do a lot of things which I wouldn't have done in my country. I've learned how to use an ultrasound to scan patients. That is a program we don't have in my school, and that's a program I would love to start in the future.
There's a ventilator in the back.
Seeing a young woman receive medical training is not an unusual sight in a large hospital like this, except Gloria is a Maasai, an ethnic patriarchal tribe in Kenya and northern Tanzania in which less than half of all girls attend primary school and only 1% go to college.
A Maasai girl doing medicine in my country is a big deal. And most of the time I get that question, you are Maasai and you're in med school, how did you get here? It's been a great journey for me.
Will you stick that? Gloria's journey began when she learned about the Maasai Girls Education Fund, a U.S.-based organization with offices in Kenya's Kajiado County that provides young Maasai women and girls with scholarships based on need for free education at boarding schools in Kenya. It was founded in 1999 by Barbara Shaw, an American who believed that educating girls will empower them, their families, and their communities and lift them out of poverty.
MGF Barbara Shaw. Yeah.
Shaw died in 2013, but her daughter, Tracy Piles, is continuing her mother's work.
It started with 2 little girls that she first met while on a photography project in Kajiado district of Kenya and staying among the Maasai in their village.
The number of girls helped by the organization has now grown to more than 150. Gloria is the first to go to medical school and train at Suburban Hospital, where Piles works as an emergency physician.
Someone like this, who has the heart that Gloria has and the desire to go back to her home, and make a difference, needs, in my opinion, to be invested in, supported, given every opportunity to make the most, because what she has the chance to do when she goes home is incredible.
The organization has proved that girls who go to school are less likely to be forced into early marriage and other cultural practices.
We have rescued girls as young as 9 who were already married, also from FGM, or female genital mutilation, which is still something that is practiced among the Maasai.
These young Maasai are among the girls who've been rescued from early marriages and are attending school. And thanks to the organization's community programs, attitudes towards young Maasai women are also changing, especially by fathers.
It's only as these girls come back, educated, teachers, doctors, lawyers, that's when they're coming to see the value of educating their daughters.
A good example is Lucy Antea, a graduate of the program who's now its Kajiado office director.
This new generation of Maasai girls who are now getting an education, they are now showing their community that they are bringing a lot of empowerment, and they are showing their community that it is not just about a one-time dowry, but they can do a lot for themselves and for their families and for the country.
It's hard to overcome strong cultural beliefs and ingrained practices, but you're never going to do it by telling people that they're wrong or bad. But by demonstrating and showing people how their own lives can be better, that's the way to affect change.
Gloria Kotente Mometa is back in Kenya now, spending time with her family and friends and completing her 5th and final year of medical school at the University of Nairobi School of Medicine.
For me, being a doctor will just have remained a dream. But now it's a reality. Yeah.
Julie Tabo, VOA News.
Very uplifting story there. Now, the Pentagon says the U.S. airstrike against an al-Shabaab camp in Somalia on Saturday killed 150 militants. The training camp targeted is 190 kilometers north of Mogadishu. An al-Shabaab spokesman, Abu Musab, confirmed the aerial attack, but says the death toll was exaggerated. He says al-Shabaab doesn't gather more than 100 fighters in one place for security reasons. Now, for more on the U.S. operation in Somalia, VOA's Carla Babb joins us live via Skype from the Pentagon. Hello, Carla.
Hello, Vincent.
Yeah, now first tell us, how was this operation conducted?
Well, the U.S. military says that it had been watching this camp in Rosa, which, as you said, was about 200 kilometers north of Mogadishu. They'd been watching this for several weeks, and they had noticed that they were planning a large-scale attack, potentially against the United States or the African Union forces in Somalia. And when they noticed that they were going to leave the camp, they decided that was the time to strike. And they came in, locals say they came in with 2 swoops. They used manned and unmanned aircraft, and they took out about 150 of the militants. The U.S. says that at any given time there are about 200 trainees in the camp, so that was considered a very successful strike. Locals, however, I know you mentioned the exaggeration, locals had said initial reports showed about 70 fighters were killed, with dozens more wounded, and expected the death toll to rise, and it could also be in the 100 plus as well. So we're still trying to figure out, after the initial assessments, exactly how many people were killed, but this was considered, regardless of the exact number, this was definitely a successful strike for the United States military.
Yes. Now, Carla, is this a kind of an ongoing operation where there are constant drone attacks in Somalia, or is this kind of done on request by authorities in Somalia?
Well, this was a very unique circumstance. As you are very well aware, the United States works, a very small number of United States military officials work with the African Union forces in Somalia to help give them guidance. They're trainers, they're liaisons, and so they are conducting these strikes on a regular basis. Part of air support is one of the things that the United States does. The United States makes it very clear that when it comes to Africa, they want to keep a small footprint. That's why there's only a few people there. Africa is for the Africans to fix, but they are there for support. And when such an opportunity as what happened this weekend came into play, it seemed very clear for the United States to take the strike.
Carla, thank you very much for your excellent reporting.
Thank you.
VOA Pentagon correspondent Carla Babb reporting live via Skype. Well, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover during the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa54 and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince Makori. Well, coming up, combating the Zika virus. Could Ugandan scientists hold the key? Stay with us.
Green Beat for a healthier planet.
Only three northern white rhinos remain on Earth, and only one of them is a male who is 43 years old and too weak to procreate on his own. The rhino keeper Zachariah Matai says Sudan, named for the country of his birth, is still very social.
Yeah, he really enjoyed being wrapped under the belly. Sometimes behind the ears, you feel it's okay.
The three rhinos reside at a conservation site in central Kenya, where they are protected from poachers by armed guards. Rhino horns are in great demand in parts of Asia where they are believed to have medicinal properties. They don't.
It doesn't cure anyone at all. So, but what we are doing is that we are creating awareness to everyone to see the importance of conserving such kind of animals.
Researchers say they hope to bring the rhinos back from the brink of extinction through in vitro fertilization with a southern white rhino, acting as a surrogate mother. I'm Rebecca Ward for VOA's Green Beat.
Welcome back. It's time for our health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu with more news on the Zika virus. Lino.
The World Health Organization has issued a warning that the international health community is not ready to tackle the Zika virus and must find a common response to the public health emergency. Scientists and experts in public health regulations, research and development gathered in Geneva yesterday to assess the progress of vaccine development, diagnosis methods, and other preparedness measures. Fear of the Zika virus is gripping the world, and particularly Latin America, as Brazil deals with an outbreak while preparing to host the Summer Olympics. Brazil has confirmed more than 640 cases of microcephaly and considers most of them to be related to Zika infections in mothers. Marie-Paul Kieni is WHO Assistant Director General for Health Systems and Innovations.
So after we've struggled with Ebola and we said never again, we should be ready. There should be R&D preparedness. We must work on having tools, vaccine, diagnostics that are quite advanced on the pathway to registration. And here we are again, and we are not prepared. And we hope that the result from this meeting will be an identification of which are the most promising products, drug, vaccine, treatments, vector control methods, or medical countermeasures, or as our friend in Barda called them, and will help all of us to make sure that we invest in the right strategies in order to do something quickly for what seems to be a real public health emergency.
Now, the evidence gets stronger every day that the Zika virus causes microcephaly, a serious birth defect, when pregnant women contract the virus. VOA's Carol Pearson reports on a groundbreaking study that found a likely biological link between the virus and the birth defect.
This is the laboratory at Johns Hopkins Institute for Cell
power that scientists at the Uganda Virus Research Institute were using in 1947 to research yellow fever when they isolated an unknown virus in the blood of a rhesus monkey. That virus, Zika, is now surging through Brazil and other parts of the Western Hemisphere.
It was isolated here, and a lot of work has been being done in this forest. Because if probably it wasn't done here those days, either it wouldn't have been known up to now, or it will be like a new disease. But the good thing is that it was known before, and it wasn't really starting from scratch when this outbreak started.
Scientists here have discovered 27 viruses in 224 species of mosquitoes. They've worked on roughly 80 viruses, including Ebola and West Nile virus, once obscure illnesses that have become global threats thanks to air travel and urbanization.
You know, viruses, diseases don't observe boundaries. They can easily say from Sudan or Zambia or Uganda. They may be here today, but a few years to come, you may find them in the United States, in Europe. So we should all be concerned.
The symptoms of Zika virus are usually mild, so people haven't been that concerned. Until now, amid reports that Zika could be sexually transmissible and that it could have mutated to cause the birth defect microcephaly in newborns. Back here in Uganda, researchers say that with proper funding, they'd be happy to look into it. Jill Craig, VOA News, Entebbe.
And that was the Zika research in Uganda. Zika was actually discovered decades ago by scientists in a small forest outside the Ugandan capital, Kampala. And now the evidence gets stronger, as I mentioned earlier, that there is a possible link between Zika and microcephaly. Here's a report by Carol Pearson.
This is the laboratory at Johns Hopkins Institute for Cell.
And that's all for our health report for today. We apologize for the technical difficulties. Back to you, Vincent.
Well, thanks a lot, Lenore. Now, be sure to watch Lenore Mudu's health reports every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, a Slovenian actor and comedian hits the jackpot with his satire. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines. In Nigeria, at least 5 people are dead after a building collapses in Lagos. Search continues for survivors. In Oman, the Australian Navy says it intercepted a ship near the country's coast bound for Somalia with an estimated $2 million in illegal weapons on board. In Zambia, opposition Vice President Jeffrey Mwamba addresses supporters after being arrested twice last week on charges of threatening the president. Finally, in Mali, the country pays tribute to musician Ali Farka Touré by naming a square in the capital of Bamako after him. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. 2 weeks after posting a satire on Russian President Vladimir Putin's machismo on YouTube, a Slovenian actor and comedian has more online hits than his country has people. 3 million viewers clicked on the Putin put out in the video. The Russian president rides a horse, bare-chested, defeats a series of chess players, organizes Winter Olympic Games in 40 degrees, tranquilizes a tiger, and dances in ballet-style tights. Well, next up, U.S. presidential candidate Donald Trump and German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Stay tuned. Well, next up, this gadget could put an end to Mexican drivers' complaints that they are being overcharged at the gas pump by crooked station owners. The app's inventor came up with the idea after seeing countless complaints on social media that some gas stations were overcharging. GasNet measures how much gasoline goes through the hose and sends that data to a device that will compare this with what the gas station is charging. A GasNet sends the information to an external device such as a smartphone, tablet or dedicated device through a Wi-Fi connection and in future via an app. The app will also allow the user to choose the best gas station not only for correct charging but also services and restrooms. Well, and finally, what started as a bright idea in the mind of a Queensland University scientist has become a commercial reality. The Node board device tests the strength of hamstrings, helping predict when they may tear. It's been snapped up by 9 English Premier League football clubs as well as Australian Football League teams, the US National Football League and American basketball clubs. 2 hooks attached to load cells measure each hamstring strength. The results demonstrate the power difference between the 2 legs, which indicates the likelihood of a potential injury. Now, in the world of elite sport, a hamstring injury is not only painful, but expensive too. And that is what is trending today. Now, Leo Sarkisian is an ethnomusicologist and the producer of the popular and longest-running radio show at VOA, Music Time in Africa. Here's a story by Zoe Ludeke.
For nearly 50 years, Leo traveled all over Africa to discover music and musicians. Now, Leo and Mary Sarkisian live in a 1-bedroom apartment in a small town close to Boston that is packed with precious mementos of a life of adventure and art. On the walls hang Mary's paintings of Africa and a portrait of an African woman by Leo. The elder care facility that is now their home hosted an exhibition of Leo's artwork from the time when he was a young soldier at the U.S. Army deployed in Africa.
When we landed, it was in the country of Algeria, and we were going to set up our headquarters in a small village called Ain Tamushant. As we walked into the town, I saw a building that had been bombed, and on the ground and on the floor were hundreds of these little funeral cards that had a black line around them. And I started gathering them up, and that's when I began to sketch.
On these small funeral cards, almost 75 years ago, he drew with pencil scenes of war, of people fleeing with children in their arms. These images talk of pain and displacement, much like the scenes of refugees crossing over to Europe.
I was touched by seeing the refugees, like some of these now when we landed in France, where women with their children.
Leo and Mary got married in 1949. They traveled extensively in the Middle East and Africa and amassed over 10,000 unique recordings of African music, which are now being digitized by the University of Michigan. In 2014, an exhibition inspired by the book Leo Sarkisian's Faces of Africa featured portraits of the many people Leo met on the continent. Sarkisian retired from VOA in 2012.
Good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. A preacher teaches or preaches in a church, and a choir is a group of singers in a church. But is this idiom about religion? Let's listen.
Preaching to the choir. I'm volunteering for the mayor's re-election campaign. She has done great things for the city.
I voted for her last time, and I'm really impressed with what she's done.
So basically, I'm preaching to the choir.
A person who is preaching to the choir is telling someone something they already believe in or agree with. Church choir singers probably already agree with what the preacher is saying because they chose that church. This idiom is not about religion. And that's English in a Minute.